Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 218 of the Thought Team Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I'm Anthony Ewing, CEO, co-founder here at Thought Team, and I will be your host today for this episode 218. We are over 200 episodes in. We're at our new Chicago headquarters, still absolutely loving this environment, both to work and to collaborate and to bring community in. And today I'm really, really excited to bring this topic of employee benefits and the employee experience to the center of the Navigating Now roundtable. And to do that, we love to bring leaders and leadership perspectives that matter most to the table to really share in this perspective. And today we've got a fascinating leader, a good friend of the Thought Team community. I've gotten to know this leader over the course of the last few months, and what I love about this leader is that she is a true practitioner in this space. Today we have AJ Norman. She is the head of business operations at Watershed Advisors, and we'll bring AJ to the table. AJ, welcome to the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, welcome. First time at the table, and we were just doing a little bit of prep, and we were saying, there's some pros and cons to going live, more pros than cons. And the pros are that you and I just get to put a topic at the center of the table, unpack it, share our own perspective. And I think today we're going to get pretty specific and granular around different elements of the employee experience and employee benefits that are really fueling and enabling our respective organizations. So, from one practitioner to the next, I'm really excited about this conversation.
I'm excited too. And I think you're right. Hopefully we'll see some of those pros about leading live. This is my first time doing that, but I am so excited to talk about this topic. It's something I'm really, really passionate about.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you and I, have in common is that we both came from and really cut our teeth in large corporate America.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you have a background with JP. I came from almost 9 years at Pfizer. And, so we were almost a product of the large corporate employee experience. Again, some pros and some cons. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background. And as you do, what aspects of the employee experience really stuck out or supported you as you grew your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did start with JP. I started as a teller when I was 17 years old, and I worked there. I feel like I grew up with that company. At the time, they had 274,000 employees across the US. And I eventually made my way into the executive office working as an executive assistant. And while I was there, I learned so much on how to steer a big ship and what that looks like. Every year they had an employee appreciation week, and that was when we got stress balls and popcorn passed around, and they're like, "We love you as an employee." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's so great." And I feel like that's what they could do in such a big space. But I think the biggest takeaway and what led me to leave Chase was while I was there, I was helping the leader I was supporting do annual reviews. And I remember him coming in and being like, "Hey, AJ, we need to put 27 people. We need to move them from meets expectations to needs expectations because we're not hitting our bell curve." And my biggest question was like, well, what if we don't have 27 employees that are actually not doing well? And he was like, well, we just got to pick the ones that should be. And so it wasn't about the employee. It was truly about, hey, we have to meet this number as a corporate structure. And I remember, and I think I was probably 22 years old. And I remember being like, one day when I run a company, I will never do this. And that's like a funny thing to say when you're 22 and think you have the entire world figured out. But it was something that truly, truly stuck with me. And a few years later, when I had been with them longer, I understood why they felt like they needed to do this bell curve. And there's a methodology that I, as a 22-year-old administrative assistant, didn't see, but was able to see behind the curtain. But the longer I was there, the more I realized that big ship and manning that many employees is truly like trying to turn the Titanic. And so there was like an eagerness inside of me that was like, how can I go to a company and see how we're able to make really, really big impact on smaller scale, and really impact like the actual individual versus the massive department. And I think there's obviously pros and cons there too. But so I left after 11 years and went to smaller scale organizations and started doing some consulting and really worked with people to like, how can we make sure that all of the employees are not just a cog in the wheel, but they're truly like, there's somebody who are making, especially when you have anywhere between 10 to 35 employees, they are your business. And that's like, they're your first client, because if you don't have them, you don't have a business. So how can you really, really focus? And that's where I got to working on much smaller scales and just making it all about the people and the person versus the big conglomerate organization.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that progression that, you followed professionally. And it's almost like along the way you collected these kind of like moments or these breadcrumbs. I tell a lot of people, having started a business of my own, that oftentimes you start a business and the spirit of it or kind of the ethos behind it is you get to do all the things that you wanted to do working for a large organization.
Right.
And now you get to do it, yourself, and then you start to bring a team on, and you start to see the employee experience lens through the eyes of others. And it's important to bring some of your own experience. I came from Pfizer. At the time there was, I think, 10,000 people in the commercial organization. There was a field sales team of over 7,000 folks. We do a lot of learning and development and leadership development here at Thought Team. So training has been in my DNA my entire career. At Pfizer, our training classes were 600 people.
Wow.
And that was in a class.
Yeah.
And the trainers, largely of which, our team here at Thought Team are comprised of, the trainers were almost like these movie stars, because they would be simulcast to these huge rooms, and they would have, hair and makeup done, and massive, production, et cetera. They were almost untouchable. And
Sure.
that was one of the breadcrumbs that I left, which is like, never be the trainer that is untouchable. Right. Because that kind of impacts the experience as much as Pfizer's training program was first in the industry. I always wanted to build something that was a little bit more personal and a little bit more organic. And it sounds like that's the DNA that you and I share. Tell us a little bit about Watershed and kind of how your company is made up, and the role that you play within Watershed.
Sure. So Watershed partners with state and local governments, and we work with them to bring vision into reality through implementation. So we just really work to help those states and local governments take really ambitious goals and bring them to life. And we do that to materially improve the life of students. We focus in education. And what makes us interesting, and why I was so interested in joining Watershed, is that we are entirely remote. So there is not an office. We don't have a headquarters. We have 33 employees across 17 states and from very different backgrounds. And I think what was really cool is a recruiter reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you should talk to these people at Watershed." And I was like, "I'm taking a year off. I'm on sabbatical. Like, call me in a year." And they're like, "Or you can talk to them tomorrow, because I think you'd be really, really interested in what they had to say." Lo and behold, 4 weeks later, I joined the team, and I haven't looked back since, and it's been really, really awesome. But I think what makes like the secret sauce at Watershed is like our leadership team is so truly dedicated to its people, and is I remember one of the first conversations I had with the CEO. She was like, "What would your recommendation be on this X thing?" And I was like, "Well, I think the rule is that we're supposed to do this." And she's like, "I don't care about the rule. What's the recommendation?" And I think that was like so refreshing, because it wasn't of like, let's break all the rules. It was like, how do we bring like a level of like humanity to the things that we do, and how do we see everything on the level? And so I'm empowered by the president and the CEO to be like, let's look beyond what the rule is, and let's look into the actual person and the person that's doing the role. I think sometimes in the environment of which we work in, which can be politically charged and can have a lot of, tough decisions and seeing tough things every single day, we're being reminded that we have a team that has each other's backs, and that is really, really working for like the right thing, is so refreshing too. Yeah. And I feel like every decision that we make, from benefits to operations, is truly focused on that. One of the things I work with my ops team on a daily basis, and the question that we always ask is, before we make this decision and before we implement this, does this make the rest of our team's lives better, or does it make their lives harder? So we're never going to implement a process where they have to like track time off in some certain way if it's going to make them do something 8 times and it's a more difficult process, just because that's what the system tells us we should do.
Yeah.
If we implement something, it's gonna be like, how can we make their life the easiest it can be, so they can focus on the project work, so they can focus on what's important, which is Watershed's mission and values, not let's just do this for the sake of like a bureaucratic like hoop to jump through. So that has been my primary focus, and the focus of my team as we continue to build and scale Watershed.
I love that question. Does this essentially like add value to our team's lives, or does it potentially take away? We had a certain agenda that I'm going to stray from a little bit, because that inspired a question that I'd love to ask you. Yeah. Has that mentality ever been, or that question ever been in direct conflict with what's right for the business?
I think so. I think there are times where I have to go, I know this is the right thing for the business. It doesn't necessarily feel the right thing for the employees. So where
Mm,
is the verge that
the
we
middle
can
ground.
bring this closer together?
Yeah.
And I think right now we're thinking about a capacity planning. Like that's something that's really, really
Yeah.
tough to think about for the team. Our team does not time track right now. Like we don't ask them, we say, hey, 20% of your time should be focused on this. We're not checking their minutes. We're not checking their hours. But it would be really, really easy to time track because that would help us track our revenue. But we're like, is making sure every minute of their time accounted for the right thing
Yeah.
for their experience, even though it may be the right thing for revenue. And that's
Yep.
a tension that we're truly sitting in of like, it would be easy on paper and my accounting team would love it if I was just like, they spent 18.7285 hours and that made the
Yeah.
profit margin on this be
Yeah.
16%, whatever. But is that the right thing? And so I think there are times like we're wrestling with that quite often. And I think
Yeah.
it's very easy to say when you have less than 50 employees, like, oh yeah, we do this and it's so fancy and it's so perfect and fine, because after 50 comes in FMLA and there's a lot of
Yep.
complexity and nuance that comes with that. But ultimately, I think what happens is if you're as a leader, you're able to sit in that tension and wrestle with it versus just making the blanket decision. I think you can't really go wrong because you're
Yeah.
not just doing the easy thing for the business, but you're understanding that there's complexity to that too.
Yeah. It's interesting. And also like having the flexibility and the agility to potentially adjust if you make a decision that might be right for the business, but has a profound impact on the team, right?
Right.
I know you and I have talked about capacity planning before, and
Mhm.
we're an even smaller organization, 20 plus people, dispersed the same way that your team is as well too. We've got about half of our folks here in Chicago, and half are virtual. Um, and I would say from year 1 or 2 in our 8 years of being an organization, our co-founder Norm had us tracking time.
Mhm.
And this was something that I had never been used to. I mean, even as part of a large consulting organization, I never really had to track my time. But it was something that he felt very strongly about for a couple of reasons. One, for the obvious, right? And be able to
Right.
kind of manage, our time and our capacity against the client needs. But I think he also knew that there was, if we started this process early on, there was an opportunity then for our team to be able to use those numbers to self-prioritize and self-manage their time. And we have seen that in spades. We probably have more conversations about prioritizing time than we do conversations about, hey, you need to be spending a little bit more time here because I saw that your hours were here,
Right.
last month.
And I think that's so compelling because I think leaders who are looking at it from that lens of
The
um,
stick versus the carrot. Yeah.
exactly the stick
Yeah.
versus the carrot. That's the best way to put it because I think, larger ships in bigger organizations are looking at it from, what do you mean they only spent 32 hours working? That's 8 hours that we could have absorbed more of their time and we could have pushed them to the full 40 or the 40 blunt max. So I think that's the big differentiator is
Mhm.
who is holding that carrot or the stick, and do they have the best intentions, and are they putting their people first?
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about maybe some of the other dimensions of the employee experience. Maybe we start with benefits. I love where your firm's at, like in between that kind of like 20 and 50 realm,
Mhm.
because you're large enough that you have to be making some big decisions,
Right.
and you want to stay competitive enough that you've got to be bringing on board not just the standard benefits, but maybe one or two that truly differentiate you. So at Watershed, what would you say are one or two employee benefits that, really that you kind of challenged your team to bring in that differentiate the employee experience?
Yeah, I think I got really, really lucky with the team that on what they had created before I joined. But I
Yeah.
think a few of the ones that stand out to me that feel that really, really matter are we have two stipends that we give our employees. One, they get $2,500 a year for their work from home budget. So, and that's kind of you do what you need to make yourself successful working from home. So if that's
Mm,
paying your cell phone bill or your Wi-Fi bill, if that's buying a flat screen TV and a desk for your office, if that's doing a rental at a WeWork, like whatever it is that you need from an employee perspective to be successful working from home, you get that $2,500 and
mm,
it's an annual budget. resets every single year. What that also does for me as a leader is that it eliminates questions. So if somebody's like, hey, AJ, can I get a Calendly subscription? I'm like, it's in your budget, go do it. So
Yeah.
it empowers their autonomy to go out and like make that spend. Another $2,500 budget that they also get in a stipend is professional development. So if they're feeling like they need a little bit more there that we're not giving them internally, or they want to go to a conference or invest in some kind of curriculum, or just really anything like a training on a LinkedIn course, there's no questions asked. If it's within their budget, they can go ahead and do it, and they're empowered to go do so. And so I think those two stipends are just really, really helpful. One, them to be like that. We're all adults, right? You can be at home and you can make a decision on whether or not you can pay for something because it's within your allowable budget. And that doesn't mean you have to run it up to your manager, to talk to the manager, to talk to the manager, to talk to AJ. Just go do it.
Yeah. It's so great. The kind of like BYO formula to some of these, I think has a couple benefits. One, it makes it less of a challenge for you all to figure out the specific investments in the home workspace or in development opportunities. And two, it gives autonomy to folks. I'm curious, in both of those, the home workspace stipend and the development stipend, where do you see folks like self-electing their investments? Like, where do you see folks using that money more than other categories?
So it's really interesting you say that, because what we, or you asked that, one of the things that we noticed a lot of people were paying for a Grammarly and a ChatGPT subscription, which
interesting,
helped them do their job. But when I pulled the annual report, I was like, okay, 11 out of at the time, I think we had 22 employees are paying for this. We as an organization should provide that for them.
Love that.
So what we did additionally is I look at that every year, is like, is there something that everybody is navigating towards that I need to provide as an employer to make their life better, that shouldn't be required for them to pull out of that stipend? So those were two: Grammarly, ChatGPT. We now pay for that for our entire staff, as well as like subscriptions to like New York Times or Washington Post, whatever it is that they're reading the most, because we want them to stay informed. We have done an org subscription on that. Another thing that I see really often are gym memberships, which I love, because
that's cool.
If they're working from home and they're not leaving the house, that gives them the ability to go out. So I have a lot of our analysts who are our by no means an entry level position, but like the initial position at Watershed.
Yeah.
So many of them have ClassPass, and I love that. And it's also a great connector for me and to them, because I can message them and be like, so what classes did you take this month? And it keeps us connected. I would say those are the big ones outside of, Wi-Fi, cell phone, and any like supplies that they need.
Yeah.
But most importantly is pulling out and seeing if I do notice a trend, and it's a conversation for my team on, hey, is that something we should be providing as an org-wide?
That's maybe the third benefit too, is like you get data on, the preferences and the needs of your team, which I just think is really cool. Let's talk about, actually I want to go to kind of like total compensation and rewards and things of that nature that you're offering your team. Before that, you had mentioned that your team is fully dispersed. So what are some of the ways that you are enabling, meaningful connection? And the way we see it is always like kind of twofold. There's the need for the team to truly connect, and then there's the need for the team to collaborate on client work. And a lot of times those are the same, but in many times we want to accommodate both. So how are you accommodating the collaboration and the connection?
That was my biggest concern joining Watershed, is I was like, I've never not worked in person. I am a social gal. I want to stop by. I want to chat. I want to like sit down face to face. And I remember asking the team, like, how are you ensuring that there is a culture here where people are connecting? And they just all kind of laughed, and they were like, you're going to be connected. And I was like, no, but how? And so the ways that Watershed obviously is a camera first organization, like everybody always has their cameras on in Zoom, unless they're eating lunch. And I still am petitioning, like, show me what you're eating. Are you eating pasta? You got chips? Like,
my team doesn't have a choice, but to see what I'm eating over lunch, I should probably.
Same. I'm like, I want to know what you're eating. I think I'm petitioning for on-camera lunches. So that is one big thing. Two other things that we do is we do a twice a year staff advance. So twice a year, well in advance, they know the dates for this year. They know the dates for 2026. They know when we're coming together, and we always prioritize and eliminating the guesswork of like, you're going to know when our next meeting is in person. So we are going to Phoenix in April, and we are going to another city that I haven't announced to my team. It would be terrible if I spilled the beans right here on this and told you first, but we're going somewhere else in October. And that is like 3 days of fully agendaed programming where we get on the same page and advance our knowledge as a team and know where the org is headed, know where we're coming from, what lessons we've learned along the way. And we set up classes and workshops for them to just advance together. And we do 0 client work during that time. So there's out of office messages. We send a message to all of our clients saying we are going to be offline for the next 3 days as we focus on collaborating together and advancing our knowledge. So we do that twice a year. And then we do an opportunity twice a year called co-working days, where a lot of our team is from Louisiana. So we go to New Orleans and we rent out a full floor of a hotel with a bunch of conference rooms, and we just work in person together. So they can do group meetings together, they can do calls together, but it's just a place where we just all bring our laptops and we pay for everyone to come in and just get that face-to-face time so that they build on that collaboration. Now, there's plenty of meetings outside when they're meeting with clients and going other places and doing other things, but these are the twice a year or 2 opportunities a year between staff advance and co-working days that we really, really collaborate on that work environment. And then the last thing that the ops team does, which we've kind of shared with other teams across the organization, is we once a week do like an open Zoom for like 90 minutes where people can just drop in, ask questions, or just co-work together over Zoom and just kind of like side by side mirror each other. And that's become a really big hit on the team of like, hey, I just want like to be in a space where I can ask questions and get things done without feeling like I'm like, hey, can you jump on a Zoom and just sit with me? So, and it's just been really, really helpful.
Yeah. I love that. Very similarly, we believe in bringing folks together and providing a little bit of agency. So it's interesting as we've moved more into our like working hybrid model, which does include for us bringing our team on site once a quarter, typically here to Chicago, and then we go off site once a year for a full team retreat. And like you all, that does not have a single kind of client agenda on it. It's truly to relax and recharge together. What we've seen over the course of the last 2 or 3 years as we built this model out is that the agenda for these quarterly Chicago onsites has gotten lighter and lighter and lighter in terms of trying to jam things in.
Yeah.
I think our propensity when we bring our teams together is to make sure that we cram as much value in as possible. And in many cases, we're trying to schedule a lot of internal training during that time. And we've learned, it's funny because it's like we're a training company, so we should know this. And oftentimes we got to take a little bit of our own medicine that sometimes we come out of those 2 or 3 days that we're all together and our heads are spinning like, what did we just learn? Because we tried to jam a whole half of a day or, a day and a half of learning, into 2 days that really should have some open air for connection, collaboration, et cetera. So, even our, quarterly 2-3 day onsites have become a lot more geared towards just creating space for connection, for collaboration. And what then happens is people organically get together and they have the brainstorming sessions, they have the client jam sessions or the design jam sessions. And so again, more agency, right? I think is maybe a thread that's being pulled through our discussion here today. Let's touch a little bit on the way that you all see, incentive comp and rewarding your folks and enabling your folks to really get excited about the work that they're doing. And that this has been a constant discussion for us, and we're really proud of the way that we've set things up in terms of offering folks opportunity. I'm curious, what are the 1 or 2 things that you focus on when it comes to compensation structure and creative ways of incenting folks and rewarding folks for great work?
Yeah, this is, I think, something that's so top of mind for both me and the rest of the executive team this year is how are we doing that? And what is the thought behind it? And not just the intention, but the action. Because it's one thing to always be like, yeah, your comp is so important to us, but like to show them, to be that transparency. So that is actually one of our priorities for 2025 is like, how are we expressing comp, not only in how we pay them out or show them our appreciation, but also how are they seeing it so that they feel like there's some level of autonomy or control over like, oh, so somebody thought I did a good job and saw me in this one siloed situation. And I think my bonus is bigger at that. I'm not really sure. That is something that we haven't, that clarity and that level of transparency, we have not gotten right just yet, but we're working so hard on, and we're transparently saying to our team, like, hey, yes, you get an annual bonus. How that bonus is determined is still in progress because we do know we allocate for your bonuses, but like, we want you to feel like, oh, if I went and knocked it absolutely out of the park, I should see that difference on my bonus indicator. So that's something we're definitely in the process of still like working and bringing them along of like, we talk about that at our staff advance, like, hey, we did a staff survey that was like, what do you want to know? What do you want to see? What helps you feel like you're part of this process? One other thing that we do that I think is comp in a way, but not actual like salary W-2 compensation, is like we work really, really hard when it comes to ensuring that our team feels that level of appreciation and ensuring that they feel connected and plugged in. So, the simple things that I don't want to say they don't matter, because they do. The simple things like recognition on all of our all staff calls and like in our biweekly staff updates and all of those things, of course, is so important. Like, thank you can never be said enough, especially when we're seeing how hard they're working to build the company, but also like, how are we honoring and rewarding the things that they're doing outside of the org? If somebody in their family is passing away and they need that time, go take it. Sending them, and we had one of our employees, her grandmother passed away and she had to drive 12 hours straight to get there. The least I could do was send her a gift card so that she can get all the road snacks on the way and all the Starbucks that she's driving. So it's like, that's not comp, but it's just, I feel like it's as equally important of how we pay our people as how we appreciate them and how we encourage them and how we're there for them during the hard stuff. Because as you know, as a leader, they spend more time with us than they do most of their family members. So how can we ensure that they are like seen and we retain them in ways that feels that is authentic, but also lets them feel like you are so valued here, and we're so sorry that we can't give you a very prescriptive thing on comp just yet because we're working through it. But what we can say is you're an important value part of this team, and we want you to know that.
I love that. I think the theme in what I'm hearing you say is transparency, whether that's the transparency that you've already offered your team in terms of the opportunities that they have today, and also the transparency of like, hey, we don't have it all figured out just yet. That's been so important. For us over the course of the last eight years, the transparency in the way that we account for and report out our incentive compensation has increased year over year over year. It's another one of these things that particularly my co-founder and I, Norm, both came from large organizations where everything was buttoned up. Everything was behind kind of like the headquarters wall. And you got little tastes of how you were compensated and why you got this bonus, but you never really got the full picture. And over the last several years, we have increased that transparency considerably, almost uncomfortably at times for us. And it has been so beneficial. Not only does our team appreciate the transparency, but they become a lot more motivated when they see down to the dollar, the percent of, this project that they were really responsible and accountable for, and how that equates then to their earning potential. And as well, we just looked at our 2024 360 kind of report out, just in terms of how we're doing as a leadership team. The team really is a lot more invested in the total success of Thoughtium because of the transparency and the autonomy that we've offered in terms of how compensation and total rewards is tied to the work that we do every day. And so the letters that we just sent out to everybody as we were closing out 2024 that showed the total package, had details down to how each project that they were staffed on rolled up to their year-end bonus and the total portfolio of the business. And I know the team's been very appreciative of that. So if I can encourage you and or any other, small business owner, head of operations for an emerging organization, it's like almost push yourself with transparency very early on, and it will pay back in dividends. It really, really will. Especially if you have a great team, and a team that are entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, cool. I said we would go 25 minutes. Of course, I knew that you and I, AJ, would go much over that, but I do want to end with a little bit of a lightning round. And this is really so that our community can get to know you, the person, a little bit better, and myself as well too. So I'm excited to ask you these questions. Are you game?
I'm so excited. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. I'm going to throw the most nebulous one at you first. I want you to think back to your childhood and describe a memory in your childhood that if you went back, you could almost say, that is why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Oh, okay. I was learning how to ride a bike, and everyone on my street knew how to ride a bike and I did not. And they were all so like, well, I can't believe you don't know how to ride your bike. You don't know how to ride your bike. And instead of somebody just being like, hey, AJ, let me show you how to ride a bike. It was like, I was just this big failure. And I remember going home, and then my next door neighbor's older brother at the time was like, tonight I'm going to show you how to ride a bike. And he like left everything that he was doing, stopped playing baseball, and came and taught me how to ride my bike. And I feel like I always think about, I never want to be the person that's like, I can't believe you can't ride a bike. I want to be the person that's like stopping and showing you. And I feel like that really put me in, that bike riding thing runs through my head all the time, rides through my head all the time, maybe. And that is why I think I am the way that I am.
Oh, I love that. Like that was your first taste of like what enablement truly feels like, right?
Sure.
That's really cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What are you reading, watching, listening to today that you're like really geeking out about? It could be, personally or professionally.
That's a great question. I have friends that just told me about this show called Paradise on Hulu.
Oh,
Have you seen it?
it's literally like if you asked me the same question, I would have said Paradise.
Really? Yeah.
Oh,
I'm still in it.
good.
I'm only on episode 4, so no spoiler alerts.
Okay.
But shout out to the Hamilton family who told me to watch that. And it takes a lot to hold my attention because I feel like I'm always go. That show has stopped me in my tracks and has allowed me to fully escape and like be present while watching it. So I can't wait to see what happens.
I find when a show is like visually appealing or like visually beautiful, I'm like much more drawn in.
Mm-hmm.
And this show is like gorgeous. I mean, down to the music and the lighting and the cinematography. It's so good.
And I just love that every episode just leaves you going,
yeah,
what?
Totally. Yeah. So Paradise, and it's on Hulu.
Yes.
That's a great show. Okay. What are maybe one or two things from your time in corporate America that you would say shaped who you are today? And when I say corporate America, I mean your experience at JP Morgan and some of the larger organizations that you worked for. Mm-hmm. Like what from that experience do you take forward that you wouldn't trade in terms of now, leading a smaller organization?
Yeah. I feel so incredibly blessed and so grateful to have spent the majority of my career, like that big bulk of time at Chase. Yeah. I think Jamie Dimon is an incredible leader. I think he has integrity. I think he's brilliant. I am so grateful to have worked for an organization that I worked there through 2008 in the big crash. And I worked in an office that was very privy to see the decisions that he made and how he navigated that entire experience. And I feel like that really, really molded in me as a leader to be able to go, hey, this is hard. And I think his transparency was forever embedded into me of like, I never want to be the leader that just pretends like everything's easy or that I'm always right. And I think working under his leadership for so long, whether I loved the bell curve or the things that I referenced in the beginning of the call, I am still I just feel so fortunate to have worked there for so long and see how he navigated really, really hard times, very highly political and polarizing times. And I think that will forever be embedded on me of like how he navigated those things. And I continually aspire to be a leader similar to him. I don't always agree with his in-office rhetoric and all of the things that are going on the smaller scale, but I think how he led a massive organization through one of the hardest financial times and storms in our recent lifetime history was just truly great.
It's interesting. I get to mentor and coach a lot of young professionals, and many of whom are working for large organizations, our clients and outside in our community. And I know that it's the cool thing to do is to go and work for a small organization or a startup. And for a lot of professionals, that is the end game. But I always tell folks, if you are working for a large organization and you're developing experience and getting exposure to these leaders and part of like the larger kind of cog in the wheel, if you will, there's so much experience that you can draw from that. And, I'd like to think that I opened my eyes to it in the 10 or 12 years that I had in large corporate America. But if I could go back, I probably would have soaked in even more because so much of who I am and how I lead today is because of that experience, for the good and the bad. And so for those folks that are, tuning in, that are part of large organizations that have aspirations to start something of your own or, potentially move to a startup, what you're doing today is going to shape the way that you approach any opportunity.
And because ultimately that large corporation was once a small startup.
Yes.
So they got something right along the way. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth absorbing.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, last question. AJ, I want you to think about something that you admire about yourself. And I want you to complete this sentence.
Okay.
If the world were a lot more like AJ, it would be blank.
Oh my gosh, that might be the hardest question I've been
It's hard
asked.
for everyone, trust me.
Yikes. Say it again. If the world were a lot more like AJ, it would be, oh my gosh, in love with Dr. Pepper. I don't know how to answer that.
You really a Dr. Pepper fan?
Oh my gosh, Dr.
Just straight
Pepper.
diesel, or you go diet?
No, straight diesel, full send, all the way. Don't give me diet. Give it to me in an extra large cup from Chick-fil-A if you're feeling
I feel
fancy.
like that's a Texas thing. I feel like Dr. Pepper's a Texas thing.
No, look, I gotta show you.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a Texas thing, but no, I love Dr. Pepper. I can't say anything about my personality, but what I can say, I love, somebody said I'm organized. I am type A through and through. I put the A in type A and AJ, so maybe that, but Dr. Pepper's also.
I love that. I think the world could get a lot more organized than it is today, for sure.
Fair.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was telling some teammates before jumping on today. I get to do a lot of these episodes. The ones that I love the most are with those folks like yourself that I consider true practitioners. And we define practitioner here at Thoughteum as treating your work like an art form or a craft. And that's very rare when you come across like practitioners, those that are just really passionate down to, hey, I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll sit in any meeting about our business and where we're headed. And I can get in front of the entire organization and lead and inspire. And, from the exposure that I've had to you and the conversations that we've had, I consider you a true practitioner. So I just get really lit up about these conversations. And I so appreciate, AJ, you joining and adding your perspective today. I think today's episode was so great because there were some real specific and tactical nuggets that you were able to offer. And we want to thank you and wish you best of luck as you continue to lead at Watershed.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy to be here.
Awesome. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We want to close things out by thanking you all, our community, our clients, our friends, our family who tune in on a week-to-week basis. 218 episodes in, and we can tell you we have just as much fun every week going live at 3:00 because we get to bring these incredible leaders to you all. You can engage with this episode and any previous episode at thoughteum.com/live. And we look forward to a new guest and a new discussion next week at 3:00 Central. Again, thoughteum.com/live is where